Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Torricelli. And when I was in the Congress with the senator, we used to call him the Torch because he was an unflagging champion of human rights. Whether it was in Cuba and Sudan, Iran, he was always fighting. And I see that that fight is still very much with him. Let me just talk about three areas that I think we all share, at least I share. And here are the three areas where I think, at least my views, coincide with all of you. One, I think it's important that we find ways to better treat the Iranian opposition, both in Iran and outside of Iran. I mean U.S. policy, I mean citizens. I think it's important that we embrace those movements of freedom. Secondly, with the MEK, I think it makes sense to take them off the terrorism list. You know, bureaucracies move slow. To move them, you've got to do sometimes gigantic leaps. I'm not making any excuses, but I do think this is something that we need to reassess right away. And it seems that this is a nascent, an important movement, and we should take steps to make that happen. The third is the Camp Ashraf situation. Obviously, we've got to find ways to protect those Iranians that are there. I think it's inexcusable that we're not doing it. Talk about having leverage with the government of Iraq. We do have it. And so we should find ways to make that happen. Now, at the same time, I think it's important to recognize why Iran is important to America's national security. Obviously, we want a different government there. So I want to state two working assumptions that maybe you still are agreeing with me. Obviously, I think in Iran there are thousands and thousands of people that reject the extreme fundamentalism, the violation of human rights. You saw in that presidential election that great movement of democracy. After more than 100 years of struggling for democracy, Iranians long for a regime that respects its citizens. Here's a country, Iran, that is 3 times larger than France. 3 times. 70 million population. We know the rich history of the Persian Empire that stretches back 6,000 years. The Iranian people, we know, are proud of their heritage, their contributions to art, to science, to learning. And despite the preoccupation that many have with the views of some of its leaders, the reprehensible views, Iran has elements in Iran of modern and very strong democracy. And it's got an Iranian community like up here. And I bet you that better ideas from this panel can come from many of you as to how we can make a difference. So what we need to do is, how do we make progress? We know that the Iranians share a deeply felt national pride that their country be respected for its history, its accomplishments, and its geostrategic importance. The second premise, where I still think we're together, is their government's documented support for international terrorism, its violation of human rights, rejection of international overtures to come to a deal on the nuclear program, the denial of the Holocaust, much more. The challenge is what do we do about all this? You know, besides give some good speeches, and how can we advance things forward? I want to focus on 2 elements of American policy. One focuses on the Iranian regime, and the other focuses on the Iranian people. I think General Zinni had some very good ideas on that. Now, dealing with the current regime, as we know from the Cold War, deterrence is above all a matter of clarity and credibility. We have to make sure that the Iranian government knows that a nuclear Iran is unacceptable, and we have to be credible when we say that we will do what it takes if Iran continues to disregard the will of the international community. Now, I haven't heard much discussion about sanctions here. It sort of came up a little bit. I'm for sanctions. I think that For the first time, I sense with Russia and perhaps China, now that we've forged this new friendship, that maybe sanctions might start working. Now, I'm not saying we negotiate with Ahmadinejad. What I'm saying is we find ways with the Iranian people by supporting the opposition, by finding those elements in Iranian society that need communicating. I'm under no illusion that a dialogue, government to government, as maybe is going through in Istanbul today, is going to work. But I think not having sanctions and a unified international approach is a bad idea. But I think sanctions is a tool that has to be refined and continued. But that has to be combined with new approaches to talk to the Iranian people. One is through the MEK group, at least, and talk to them and find ways that we work together. The other obviously is protecting the rights of those at the camp. And the third is, how do we communicate with the opposition in America, in Europe, in Iran? I just think that this issue is so important that it has to involve the American people. It has to involve you. It has to involve members that are directly affected by this issue. It has to involve talking to your senators and congressmen and finding ways to get the American people in your states to be part of this dialogue. And so, thank you.